Thanks for joining us on the Cooks Pantry. We are fortunate enough to be out here on the land amongst the stunning olive groves here at Cobram Estate. And being in a setting like this, it inspires a very specific type of cooking. And for me, it's rustic, it's home style, and such an incredible example of that is a good old homemade pizza. When it comes to homemade pizza and making the dough from scratch, I feel like there's a little bit of fear amongst the home cook. It's really not that difficult. You just need a simple process, a simple recipe, and just to give it enough time. So here's my take on a good, solid, homemade pizza dough recipe. We've got a 1.5 cups of 00 flour, or 225 grams, some dried yeast, and a little bit of sugar. So we've got a couple of tablespoons of sugar here. I'm just gonna combine those two and then activate that with some warm water. So putting the sugar and the yeast together, they work well together. The yeast will feed off that, which is what we want. So we've got some warm water. So what that's doing, it's melting the sugar, and at the same time, the yeast will start to activate and feed off that sugar. So we'll set that aside, and then in here, we're just gonna go in with our sea salt, a good pinch, and about 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. All right, so that's gonna do a couple of things. The oil in there, it gives it that, obviously that lovely flavor and will help with that crust, but it also gives it that lovely elasticity. And when we start to knead this dough, you'll see what consistency you're looking for. You want it to be rolling it and kneading it to the point where it's beautiful and soft and elastic, but it's not gripping to the bench anymore. So I'm just gonna let that yeast activate for another 2 or 3 minutes until we start to see a couple of bubbles and some aeration on top, and then we'll combine the dough and I'll show you guys how to knead it. We've had our yeast activating for a couple of minutes now, so that's ready to add into the flour, salt, and the extra virgin olive oil. So again, making doughs at home can get a little bit messy, particularly if it's a pizza dough, roti, scones, anything like that. So I just use a butter knife, and we just work it and mix it. So you keep your fingers out of trouble until we just bring that together. And once it's formed that rough ball, I guess, then we can turn it out onto the board, and with a little bit of flour, and we'll just start to knead it. Okay, so you can see our dough has just started to come together in there, and it's a little bit sticky. So I'm just gonna dust our bench here. All right, and take that out onto the board. All right. Make sure you got a little bit of flour on your hands, and we're just gonna work it. So I sort of push out with that palm and then just fold it over. That feels beautiful and soft. If there's one position you wanna be in with the dough, it's slightly too wet, not slightly too dry. That makes it really difficult. And you'll see, when you press your fingers in, that's looking really beautiful and soft. That's what you want. A little bit of flour, bit by bit, until you get to the point, see how it's still sticking ever so slightly on the board. We're gonna work it, and as we activate the gluten, that will make it more elastic, and then it'll stop sticking to the bench. So I'll just knead this for another 3 or 4 minutes, and then I'll be able to wrap it up, cling film, nice warm spot, and leave it for, it's a little bit chilly out here, so I'll probably put it somewhere next to the fire. If you're at home, if you've got the oven on, you're gonna leave it just to the side of that, wrapped up cling film, tea towel over the top, and leave it for probably at least an hour to get that first rise. Perks of being on the road. To get that first rise, to get it really beautiful and aerated, and then we can knock it back. All right, the dough is looking sensational. That's risen up really nice. Just gonna, a little bit of ash. And you can feel there's moisture in there. It's nice and humid, which is the perfect conditions to get that dough to rise. Right. Oh, so soft. So we're just gonna scrape that out onto the board, get every little bit of it. And we just wanna knock the air out of that. And then we're gonna divide it into our portions to make our individual pizza bases. So we're almost back to our original size. Just shape it up. I reckon I get 2. That feels really good. So we just divide that, split that into 2. That's gonna give us 2 decent sized pizza doughs. And if you can't ball it in 2 hands, just on the base and just sort of cut it back and forth, back and forth. And you can see it's got so much give in it. Look how relaxed that is. It's almost falling apart on itself. That's how you want it to be, really nice and soft. And then flip it over. Transfer it onto a tray. We've got a bit of baking paper on there just to make sure it doesn't get too sticky. And then I'll put that back in that warm spot we have over there, let them rise up again, and then we can turn them into pizza. Perfect. Wet chucks, wet tea towel, anything you've got. And just place them over the top, and back down we go. All right, the pizza dough has had their final round of resting and they look absolutely spot on. You can see how relaxed they are, just collapsing. So we're just gonna take these off, and this is where we need to be really, really gentle. So a little bit of flour on the board, not too much. So I'm not a huge fan of using a rolling pin. I believe we just use the weight of the dough to just stretch itself out. So grab it right by the edge, spin, 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 and you can see it's just starting to lengthen and you'll get a beautiful, nice rustic base, but you don't want to get any holes in it. So we just play it by ear and then back onto the board, and we just kind of stretch it out and just use our fingers to tease it out. And that way you will have a nice edge, a nice crust on it, okay? All right, so just gonna remove this guy. You can sit there. Just a little bit of oil on the base. If you have a little bit of semolina, that'd be awesome to throw down. All right, so we'll just transfer this guy. Just be really gentle, laying it down. I love that shape. It's awesome. All right, we're just gonna throw a little bit of the Cobram garlic oil on the base. So I'm gonna go on with the potatoes. Now it's quite a classic combination of a pizza. The first time I ever had it though was funnily in Canada, in Whistler, a little place called Creek Bread. So they used to make this potato pizza with this beautiful sort of rosemary cream sauce, had a bit of creme fraiche in it, and then the onions over the top. There was the option to add bacon, which was a big crowd favorite. A few little really fine slivers of garlic, fresh rosemary, just scatter that over the top, and then some freshly grated Parmesan. A little bit of cracked pepper, and then just another little hit of the garlic oil over the top. All right, so I've got a little mock wood fire oven set up here. I've got the coals split to both sides, an old cast iron camp stove in there, which is gonna be the stand to put this pizza on. That's like our fire brick base. Fingers crossed. Have a look at that bad boy. Sizzling away. You've got it to that perfect point. You just push it that little bit further and that incredible crust on there looks phenomenal. Now, making pizza, it's a labor of love. So my advice to you, pick a day, organize your crew and enjoy it in the process.